What's up guys, it's your boy Senron. In my last video, I talked about armor, magic resistance and health in League of Legends, and how they can be used to become nearly indestructible. I briefly made notice of the fact that resistances can also be negated through the use of physical and magical damage negation. In this video, I'll cover the importance of resistance reduction, resistance penetration, and lethality, and how to efficiently combine them to become death itself. In order for you to understand the specific quirks of ignoring a target's resistance, I first have to clarify a common misconception. Resistance reduction, resistance penetration, and lethality are not the same thing, even if they all do the same job, which is negating either armor or magic resistance. I'll explain why that is important later. For now, let's just focus on them individually, starting with resistance reduction is a status effect that reduces the target's armor and or magic resistance by either a flat amount or by a certain percentage for a specific amount of time. Armor and or magic resistance reduction are almost solely applied through specific champion abilities, for example Garen's E ability Judgment or Corki's E ability Gatling Gun. The only two exceptions to this rule are Black Cleaver and Baron Nashor's passive ability. Black Cleaver is an item that applies a temporary 5% armor reduction debuff on an enemy every time they get hit by a physical damage-based attack, up to a maximum of 6 stacks or 30% armor reduction. Baron Nashor's passive ability, Voracious Corrosion, works similarly to Black Cleaver, but instead of reducing the enemy's armor by a percentage, Baron Nashor's basic attacks reduce the victim's armor and magic resistance by a flat amount per stack. Each stack reduces the receiver's armor and magic resistance by 0.5, stacking up to 100 times for a total of 50 armor and 50 magic resistance, which might not sound like a lot on paper, but in practice, it looks a little something like this.
Finally, a man who can satisfy me.
Shut up, monkey bitch!
If you've played League more than once, chances are that you've encountered a symbol that looks something like this. This thing here indicates that this champion here has reduced resistances. Which type of resistance reduction depends on the color. Orange and a broken shield, armor reduction. 2 light blue circles broken in half, MR reduction. Half a shield and half of 2 circles, well, that's armor and magic resistance reduction, of course. There are 2 types of penetration in League of Legends. Physical damage penetration is a percentual stat that dictates how much of a target's armor will be ignored when the aggressor deals physical damage to their target. There are only a handful of items and champion abilities that provide percentual armor penetration, though to be fair, you don't really need more than 30% anyways. More on why that is later. Magical damage penetration is both a flat and percentual stat that dictates how much of a target's magic resistance will be ignored when the aggressor deals magical damage to their target. Again, the item and champion choices are quite limited, but enough to deal a moderate amount of damage to even the tankiest enemies. Some people claim that there's also a third type of penetration, which occurs when you play solo queue at 3 AM. But I can't confirm that theory, because unlike the people that created it, I actually have a life. Oh right. Lethality replaced flat armor penetration way back in Season 7. It uses this formula to convert itself into flat armor penetration again, based on the user's level. This formula tells us that lethality converts to 62.22% flat armor penetration at level 1 and to 100% flat armor penetration at level 18. This might sound confusing to some, so let me just create an example here. This is Ezreal.
Please give me huggy wuggies!
Ezreal is a little piece of shit with 100 armor. And this is a level 1 Zed with 100 lethality. As you should know from my last video, 100 armor correlates to 50% reduced physical damage. And as you know from this video now, 100 lethality at level 1 correlates to 62 flat armor penetration. Let's see what happens if Zed attacks Ezreal.
Bruh.
Ezreal survived because his armor value is still at 38, which is around 27% physical damage reduction. But what if Zed was level 18? Ezreal died because his armor value is now at 0, which means that he takes full damage from all of Zed's abilities. This is known as raw damage, and a person that receives raw damage is referred to as naked. The difference between resistance penetration and resistance reduction lies in this formula. As you can see, the priority in which resistance negation is applied is based on a structure, so that individual stats and effects don't clash with each other. Let's create another example. Well, use physical damage and armor as values. Keep in mind that the numbers used in the following calculation could and would also be used with magical damage and magic resistance.
Warning, the following scene contains math. Only continue if you are a real math head.
This is Tarek.
I'm gay!
Tarek has been selling secret government information to other countries to satisfy his dirty needs. He also has 300 armor, but because he had a massive leg day yesterday, his armor is reduced by a value of 10 flat and 20 percentual. And this is Zed again. Zed is level 18 and has 30% armor penetration and 50 lethality. If Zed goes for a full combo on a target with 0 armor, he deals a total of 5,000 physical damage. Let's use the formula to see how much damage he would deal to Tarek. First, we reduce the 300 armor by the flat amount of armor reduction. That would be 290 armor. Then, we multiply the 290 armor by the percentual amount of armor reduction. So 290 times 1 minus 0.2 equals 232 armor. After that, we multiply the 232 armor by the percentual amount of Zed's armor penetration, so 232 times 1 minus 0.3 equals 162 armor. And lastly, we subtract Zed's lethality, converted to flat armor penetration. That would change Tarek's remaining armor from 162 to a total of 112 armor, or 52% physical damage reduction. This means that if Zed is able to deal 5,000 damage on an enemy with 0 armor, he would deal a total of 2,400 damage to Tarek, which isn't a lot. But what if Tarek had skipped leg day? In that case, Tarek would have a flat armor reduction of 301 and a percentual reduction of 50%. Again, we begin by reducing the 300 armor by the flat armor reduction of 301 to get minus 1 armor. And that's it. Percentual resistance reduction and resistance penetration have no effect on a target that has a resistance value of 0 or below. Let's see what happens if Zed attacks Tarek now. As you might have noticed from the many examples that I've made throughout the video, there is also a slight difference between percentual and flat resistance negation. Flat values, such as lethality, work best against opponents that have little to no resistance stats. Examples of such enemies are ADCs, mages, and enchanters. However, flat resistance negation has little to no value against bruisers and tanks due to the way resistance values work. Again, check out my last video to learn more about it. Percentual values, such as LDR or VS, work best against opponents that have a lot of resistance stats. Examples of such enemies are bruisers, tanks, and frontline supports. However, LDR and VS might end up being a mispurchase if you're playing against a team that consists of only glass cannons. And that's it. That's all you need to know about resistance negation and penetration. In my next video, I'll cover status effects, such as stuns and slows, and how they can be used to demoralize enemy players.